Hey, I'm Scott, and I am an American in Bangkok. And today we're going to talk about a woman who came to Thailand, and it was her job to come here and cover the opening of the Phuket Sandbox. Now, I have known several people who have come into Thailand, not into Phuket, and all of them said the same thing, that the process of getting into Thailand is a major pain in the rear, and that nothing was really easy about it. They ended up getting it done, but it was definitely not anything like it used to be, where you could just jump on a jet and come right over. Didn't even need a visa. So let me get into this. The name of the article, which came from the Point Sky, is Thailand's complex process to visit. How I didn't have a visa until 36 hours before departure. Now, I'm going to put the link to this article down below in the description, which you can find a host of ways to help support the channel. You can get a shirt, you can get one of my books, you can join the channel through the join button down below the video window. You can become a Patreon patron. There's, as I said, a host of ways you can help support the channel in addition to watching. I am supposed to be on a flight to Thailand tomorrow evening, and until this morning I wasn't even sure I was going. My editor asked on June 29th if I was interested in flying to Thailand. I am. I fully vaccinated against COVID. I am fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and knew Thailand was preparing to reopen, so I was interested in flying to the country to cover the reopening. I'd been to Thailand twice before the coronavirus pandemic, so I was curious to see how the tourism-dependent economy planned to bounce back slowly. At one point, I was convinced that this reporting trip was not meant to be. What followed was over a week of unclear directions, compiling paperwork, and back-to-back application denials from the Thai consulate in New York. Welcome to Thailand. TIT, this is Thailand. Thailand is welcoming certain visitors with open arms, but if you're expecting an easy application process, you might want to temper your expectations and apply in advance. Now, Phuket is Thailand's most popular island destination, and they welcome the international visitors for the first time in 15 months as the country is cautiously reopening to some fully vaccinated travelers. Now, it's not that they're really reopening the country, although you can get into other parts of Thailand. What they're doing is they're using this as a model to see if they can use it in other areas, and other countries are following closely to see if they can do the same with their country. Now, under the scheme called the Phuket Sandbox, fully vaccinated visitors can enter Phuket from a list of countries, including the United States, and skip the COVID-mandated 14-day isolation period. To be eligible for the program, travelers must submit a COVID-19 test before flying and 2 more tests after arrival. Actually, it's 3 more tests. It's a test when you arrive, a test on, I think, day 6, and a test on day 12. So a total of 4 tests. Now, the one test is at your home, back in your own country, and 3 tests, which are approximately $100 a pop. Those are required, and you are the one who pays for those tests. All international travelers must also download a location tracking app and cannot travel to the Thai mainland for 14 days. No sneaking out. Travelers not staying in Phuket for the full 14 days cannot travel to the mainland at all. The Phuket Sandbox Initiative is the Thai tourism industry's latest attempt at wooing back travelers. It previously offered $1 per night hotel rates and promoted 6 resorts offering a golf quarantine earlier this year. Officials hope the Phuket Sandbox will provide a successful blueprint to reopen Thailand's other popular tourist hotspots on October 1st. Very unlikely. The target date set by Thai officials. Those destinations include Bangkok, Chonburi, Chiang Mai, Phetchaburi, Prachuap Khiri Khan, Phang Nga, Krabi, Surat Thani, and Buriram. Applying for the Phuket Sandbox program is not simple or even straightforward. These are not my words. These are her words in the article, and perhaps that's the Thai government's intention. After all, Bangkok and several other Thai provinces are under restrictions for 30 days, even as Phuket reopens, after a surge in cases. Nearly 6,000 new infections are reported a day, according to Reuters. That's up to over 9,000 a day and quite a few deaths, 91 deaths today. According to local reports, a Sandbox tourist tested positive for COVID-19 and was hospitalized. 13 passengers on the same flight as the person who tested positive are also required to quarantine. That really sucks. So if somebody's on your flight and they test positive, guess what? There goes your vacation. With those figures in mind, I understand why Thailand is taking a stricter approach towards tourism. Traveling to Thailand means jumping through more hoops than in other countries. A Bangkok Post editorial called the program a prison vacation. I liken it to the island of Phuket is a more beautiful place, and there are probably far more things to do, but it is the Thai version of Alcatraz. But where the government could do a better job is in its explanation of the application process. And that is the communication aspect is almost always the weak point in the Thai government's interacting with foreigners. Here are the requirements for entering Thailand under the Sandbox program. Passport and valid Thai visa or re-entry permit, must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 no less than 14 days from the travel date, and must have a vaccination certificate to verify vaccination. A printed certificate, COE, a letter given by the Thai embassy or consulate that allows foreigners to enter the country. A negative RT-PCR test issued within 72 hours before departure. Insurance covering a minimum of $100,000 of medical costs, including medical expenses if the applicant contracts COVID-19. A health declaration form. These are just the requirements needed to get into Thailand. The certificate of entry is an application all on its own, as I quickly find out. After confirming my travel dates, I immediately began to work on my COE application, which you can fill out online. Now, this woman is getting paid to come to Thailand. She's doing all this, and it's part of her job. Okay, I can understand it. But imagine you're doing this as part of your holiday. It kind of takes away from the experience. I guess you could look at it that way. It depends on if the glass is half full or half empty. But you could say, wow, remember 10 years ago when I had to go through all that, Margaret, to get into Phuket? Woo, what a hassle that was. But we made it, honey. Somehow I think that's a memory that most people don't want to have. The application process started normally with requests to enter my passport and travel information. The country says it can take 3 working days to process applications, and with my travel dates on the horizon, I knew I needed a head start. Here's where it got confusing. We decided to book my hotel reservation first, as you can't even apply for the COE without it. I'd initially planned to hotel hop around the island, but travelers must stay in the same hotel for the first 7 days under the Sandbox program. We also found out that the Sandbox travelers have to stay at an SHA Plus, that is Safety and Health Administration Plus, approved a property, and pocket the cost of a COVID-19 test taken upon arrival. I submitted my application, which included my hotel reservation, and quickly received a message saying it would be pre-approved within 3 working days, so I was pretty surprised when I received another email with a rejection note. The Thai government kicked my application back to me with a message requiring proof of entry and departure flight, but I was allowed to submit my application without it, which was confusing. After uploading my flight information, I received an automated email from the government saying that my application had been pre-approved. The next day, I received another email, this time saying that my application had been confirmed, but I was unclear what the difference was between the two statuses. My application was then frustratingly rejected with an automated message stating that the hotel needed to provide a unique QR code. And by this point, the application process was starting to feel like a game of whack-a-mole. Calls to the Thai consulate in New York went unanswered. Nothing new, I hate to tell you. Nothing new. I can say that from experience. And it took 2 calls to my hotel in Phuket to finally get the required QR code needed to complete my application. Now, that's pretty good, actually, only 2 calls. I can tell you that right now, because I can see her getting passed around from person to person, depending on the hotel. I'm going to assume she's staying in a nice hotel, so there were some English speakers, and they spoke English fairly fluently. But I can only imagine, having to call Thailand and just deal with the people and try to get things straightened out. And they're like, huh? I don't know. I don't understand. What are you talking about? That kind of thing. A short time later, I resubmitted my application with bated breath, hoping that it was correct. A short time later, my certificate of entry was finally approved just 36 hours before departure. If I had to redo the process, I'd planned the trip further in advance. After starting the COE, travelers have 15 days to finish the application. If you submit the application incorrectly or you're missing documentation, the consulate or embassy will reject your application, so the Sandbox program might not be the best travel option if you like to plan trips at the last minute. Listen, right now is not the time to be traveling unless you absolutely have to, and it especially is not the time to travel to Southeast Asia. Whether it's Indonesia, Thailand, wherever it is, there are many places you can't even get into the country. So, the Bangkok Post opined that travelers in the Sandbox program wouldn't experience the Phuket of old. Instead, it said they'll be met with draconian rules, restrictions, and closed shops. Even after my application debacle, I wonder, is not going back to the old necessarily a bad thing? In this case, I know what it was like long ago. I know what it was a short time ago. And in the interim, but between both of those, I've been to Phuket several times in the past few years. And I know what it was like about 25 years ago also, but also three months or so ago. And I can tell you, I would rather have the old than what is going on now. Now, if the future resembles the old, well then, okay, the future's fine. But as of right now, I would say not going back to the old is a bad thing. Traveling during the pandemic means being accustomed to ever-changing rules. Welcome to Thailand. This is Thailand. TIT, baby. I visited Turks and Caicos in June, and that country had pretty strict entry requirements. I'm okay with more stringent regulations because they, in theory, are meant to protect local residents. It's not lost on me that just 4% of Thais are fully vaccinated against the COVID-19 either. I think it's 4.45%, maybe a little bit higher now. But yeah, that's another matter. However, in Phuket, they're supposedly almost 70% vaccinated. I don't know how true that is. I don't know all the specifics of it, but more rules aren't the problem, but if Thailand hopes to have a successful tourism program, it could certainly stand to streamline its application process. Definitely. Definitely. The hoops that you are made to jump through and the patience that is required, which patience is, a virtue. Patience is something that if you're going to come to Thailand, if you're going to live in Thailand, whatever it is you're going to do in Thailand, you need to have a little bit of patience. It behooves you to remember to have that patience. But it's interesting to see her experience, and this is a traveler who is a seasoned traveler. This is a woman who travels for a living. So, interesting. I thought it was very interesting. Kind of what I expected, to be completely honest. So, that's all I have for now. I'm Scott. I'm an American in Bangkok. Do me a favor, leave a like, click subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this. I personally think that people who are coming over here now and trying to go into Phuket are it's a huge gamble. It's a gamble. It's like you come over, one thing goes wrong, boom, your vacation is ruined, all that money's down the toilet. Until next time, I'm Scott. I'm an American in Bangkok. Chok D, Jerk and Mai. That's good luck and see you later.